Hello and welcome to our webinar today, Data Meets Strategy, Discovering Siemens Digital Business Optimizer. My name is Ryan Evans and I'm the Executive Director of Chambers for Innovation and Clean Energy, or CICE. CICE is the national network of chambers of commerce and economic development organizations advancing the clean energy economy. Founded and led by Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development executives with over 140 years combined chamber experience, CICE's network includes over 1,300 chambers and economic development groups across the country. Our primary mission is to make the business case for clean energy. We do this by working with our network to help these business and economic development organizations better understand good clean energy policy, the economics of clean energy, and the innovative ways that clean energy can lead to a more reliable grid, greater energy security for our country, and help meet the rising energy demand we are seeing in America thanks to increased manufacturing, AI centers, and data centers. Joined today by three great presenters to help demonstrate how you can easily get the information you need on all types of energy efficiency, storage, generation, including the rate of return on your investment. Our three presenters today are Sean Davis, Vice President, Sustainability and Energy Programs at the Greater Cleveland Partnership, our co-host today. Anthony Casciano, President and CEO of Siemens Financial Services Americas, and Erica Gupta, Head of Sustainability and Environmental Initiatives for Siemens Financial Services America. I would now like to introduce Sean Davis to join me on camera from the Greater Cleveland Partnership, who is our co-host today and truly a great partner to our organization. Not only is GCP one of the largest chambers in the country, but they are heavily invested in energy issues of all kinds that are important to their members and their community. Sean's going to say a few words for us about his chamber's engagement with sustainability and this tool and why they agreed to co-host this event today. Sean?
Thanks, Ryan, and the team from CICE for reaching out to partner on this. I also want to thank the team at Siemens for their dedication to creating innovative products to help businesses be more efficient and competitive. Let me start by giving you a little background on the Greater Cleveland Partnership. As Ryan said, we are the largest metro chamber of commerce in the United States with right around 12,500 members. The bulk of those members are going to be your small to mid-sized companies, as you could imagine. And a lot of the service offerings that we have are focused on those companies, but we also cater to our larger businesses in the region. Our North Stars that really drive the work that we do are increasing household income, increasing jobs in the region, and increasing the GDP for the region. We do that really by 5 pillars, we call them. One is our dynamic business, which is really focused on R&D efforts, in the investment in the region, talent in the region, providing inclusive opportunities in the region, and appealing community, and making sure our lakefronts and rivers and downtown are developed to its maximum potential. Under the appealing community pillar, it sits sustainability. Back in 2022, we started our sustainability program with a dinner with 10 of our larger businesses in the region who wanted to grow this group to share best practices with other companies. They also were concerned about our mid-sized companies being blindsided by the reporting that the larger companies were going to require them to do. And the third thing that they really wanted was for us to do a summit. So we just had our third summit this year, and it was very successful. And we would encourage companies that are starting on their sustainability journey to join us in our summit coming up in March of next year. That brings us to why we are here. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, companies face unprecedented challenges. Supply chain disruptions, increasing energy costs, extreme weather events, and mounting pressures for sustainability reporting have created the perfect storm of complexity. The question isn't whether your business will need to adapt, it's how quickly and effectively you can do so while maintaining profitability and competitiveness. Small and medium enterprises in manufacturing face unique pressures. You're competing against industry giants while operating with leaner teams, tighter budgets, and less margins for error. Every decision matters more. Every inefficiency cuts deeper, and every opportunity missed can impact your bottom line significantly. Yet, Traditional optimization solutions have been designed for large corporations with dedicated IT teams and massive budgets. Today, you're being introduced to Siemens Digital Business Optimizer, specifically engineered to democratize advanced manufacturing intelligence, making sophisticated optimization accessible to all companies. Why does this matter specifically to the Greater Cleveland Partnership community? Because Northeast Ohio is positioning itself as a leader in the clean energy and smart tech space. Our region's businesses need tools that don't just help them survive, they need solutions that help them thrive as suppliers to global companies with increasingly sophisticated sustainability demands. In this webinar, you'll gain practical insights that can immediately impact your bottom line while positioning your business for long-term success in an increasingly data-driven world. I want to thank everybody for having us here today, and thank you for coming out. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. And thanks again for being a co-host for us today. I would now like to introduce Anthony Casciano. Anthony is President and CEO of Siemens Financial Services Americas, with a responsibility for the US, Canada, and Latin America. He is also CEO of SFS Projects and Structured Finance America business units, which provides debt financing, including corporate lending, project finance, and structured finance solutions to clients across the region. In this role, Anthony implemented a regional sustainability strategy, helping customers reach business goals through a diverse offering of financial solutions. As part of these efforts, Siemens launched the Digital Business Optimizer, which allows companies to digitally customize a business strategy for their facilities, helping them maintain business continuity, increase competitiveness, and prepare for the market forces of tomorrow. Anthony, if you'll please join me on screen, I will turn it over to you.
Ryan, thank you. And thank you all for the opportunity to spend some time with you. I'll spend maybe the next 15 minutes kind of setting the stage for what the Digital Business Optimizer is and why we created it. And then my colleague and partner, Erica Gupta, will take you through some simulations for how it works. And Michaela, if you can help me with the presentation, I'm having a little bit of difficulty. We'll go ahead and if you look at the introduction, it says create a high impact, cost effective strategy to optimize your facilities. Cool. I could equally say how to compete in a time of disruption. And Michaela, why don't you go ahead and click? We engage in the business a consultant who is a former NSA employee who now advises Fortune 1000s on future trends. And I thought I would share some of what he's given us, because it really, in some ways, plays nicely with what we're talking to you about today. So there are themes. We'll focus on 5 that are emergent, that I'm sure you're confronting in your businesses that will challenge both your business and your customers. The first is nationalism, right? I grew up in a time when everything was about globalization. Now it's nationalism. We're bringing business back, and those businesses will comprise largely of what will be the supply chain, the small and medium companies that drive the economy in the United States. It's absolutely resurgent. It's deglobalization is happening, and we're seeing it in all parts of the world. So I don't think it's unique, and I think it's likely, or he thinks it's likely, sustainable in the future. The next is obviously, and we will talk about today, impacts of natural hazards. They're no longer episodic, whether it's severe and more frequent incidents, high cost to recover, coastline impact, all the things that we see in the press. I could put clippings on, as could you, on any given day, a weather event that is impacting business and your ability to meet your customers' requirements. Availability of resource correlates to ability to execute strategies. So we saw the breakdown of supply chains during COVID, right? And so you're seeing government more actively involved in helping businesses be competitive here, securing resources domestically, and then, regulatory, what he said, regulatory expansion is inevitable. I think what that translates to, we're witnessing, every day, particularly with what we're seeing with tariffs and other things. But political tensions, conflicts will impact the ability to consume, to find and consume the resources that we need. Demographics put pressure on availability of skilled labor to drive innovation. Fortune came out with an article recently that said there'll be 4 million manufacturing jobs needed, for which 2 million available applicants can fill. So there's a shortage. And so if you think about what manufacturing or what services will be delivered in the future, it's going to have to be hand in glove with what automation and digitalization is. Demographics are just driving it. It's not just here. In the mature countries, you have sort of that low growth aging population, and there's a gap between the skilled labor, particularly as it's related to high tech. The developing world, it's the opposite. It's an inverse of that bell curve, or it is the bell curve where the younger or the youth bulge drives those markets. And so if we believe in nationalism in the upper left, and we believe that we're going to need the resources, and we're going to have to confront natural hazards, then we're going to have to build what would be, in my mind, the factory of the future, embracing technologies to be competitive. And that's the last point, right? Embracing technology as a core strategy will determine winners and losers, adapt or die. To us, and offensively, it's how you leverage robotics and AI, advanced materials, 3D printing, things like that. And defensively, it's how do you mitigate the cybersecurity risks that we confront, one of which we'll show you or we'll talk to you about in the DBO. But how do you manage the incidence of cyber attack? If anyone needs to understand the magnitude, go look at Change Healthcare, which is part of United. They had an attack on their systems that affected 190 million U.S. citizens to a degree where United couldn't how to pull their earnings because they weren't sure of the magnitude of the impact between what they had to pay in ransomware to the lawsuits they had to confront. You're seeing companies have to confront this, and you're starting to see it in RFPs coming from their customers. So your customers will start to build into RFPs a better understanding of what you do to mitigate cyber risks. So you're looking at lots of different ways that impact your ability to compete. We're looking at ways to help you do it through the strength of what Siemens offers. Michaela, if you can. So we're looking at really the ecosystem and how we address those challenges, how we travel with you, our customers, on an optimization journey, whether it's baselining to implementation. The DBO is a tool. It's a tool that is free, that we've built to both help in 3 ways. One is you understand your carbon footprint. If you're looking to decarbonize, if that's part of your strategy, or if your customers are expecting it. 2, are you resilient? Can you withstand the weather events that we're talking about? 3, are you cyber secure? Do you understand the risks inside your business and where they exist? That's the purpose of the tool. Once you understand that, then Siemens has either itself or through its ecosystem of partners, products and solutions to help you build resiliency inside your business around those topics. We bring a balance sheet And whether it's us or whether it's a local green bank or ecosystem partners that we have, the financing is available for this journey. Three, the collection of data inside the DBO helps understand and baseline market knowledge, which then can be translated back to you to help you understand how you perform against your peers. And then three, how do you build a marketplace that makes it easy to execute the strategy you're looking for? For us, it's called the accelerator. And again, when you look at that, if you're in the middle as a small, medium company, we have the financial ecosystem, we have the products and solutions to travel with you, and we have curated information and resources, the tools that help you on that journey. And again, for us, what we need to convey to you, and we'll talk about in a second, is we use third-party trusted data. So it's not ours, there's no bias built into it. And we make sure that the tool is free and available to you because we don't want to define winners and losers. We want the tool to be as ubiquitous as possible so that everyone has the same chance to participate and compete. Michaela? Why don't we just click through the whole animation on this slide? We spent a lot of time looking at the impact of carbon or supply chain emissions. And when you look at supply chains for Siemens itself, it's 15 times higher than our own operational emissions. In general, in the market, supply chain emissions are 11 times operational emissions. And small, medium companies are the core of the supply chain. So they generate 60 to 70% of pollution. And 80% of the scope 3 emissions. Why does this matter? When we first built the tool, it started with baselining the carbon footprint because our customers that we finance started to get RFPs, like I mentioned before, that said, not just what's your widget and the price of your widget, but what's your carbon footprint, because they needed to measure and report out their scope 3 emissions. Do I think there's a de-emphasis on this today? The answer is yes. Do I think we need to take the foot off the accelerator? The answer is no. I think there used to be a green premium. If you wanted to decarbonize, if you wanted to use renewables as a source of energy, the premium to pay that against conventional, say, energy was far greater. That green premium has shrunk where you can invest and get a payback, and we'll show that through the tool. So you can do two things at the same time, right? You can be a more efficient operator, and by the way, any investment in future factory development will be a more efficient, by definition, through automation and other technologies will be more efficient. How do you stay competitive with that? Michaela, why don't you go ahead and click on the next, and again, take the whole animation out. Yep. Let's talk about, we talked about the hazard, natural hazard risk. 40% of the US population sits in a coastal area. That's not as big a risk where you are in Ohio, but 40% of society sits in coastal areas, and sea levels are rising by 2100 about 6 feet. That's going to flood out and make inoperable some parts. Now, I think innovation will protect us from a lot of that, but we can't ignore what's in front of us. Go look at the harbor in Boston as a for instance, and the challenges that they have with flooding and the rate of increase of the water levels there. So we can't ignore it. It's not just water, it's wind, right? It's fires, it's all of that stuff. So natural hazards cause about 40% loss in annual profits every decade. I can give you a whole bunch of different statistics. One study, I think by BCG, said companies lose a full year's worth of earnings every 3.7 years due to disruption created by natural hazard, right? So it can generate significant annual downtime. Optimizing drives revenue growth, 11% median annual revenue growth for companies that have integrated natural hazard risks in their strategies. What we hear when you look at the OEMs back to the supply chain is, and I'm sure you're hearing it in the same way, is that the OEMs, your customers, need confidence that you can deliver what they want when they want it. And the big impediment to that is the risk of a natural hazard. So what you can do to mitigate that risk brings confidence to your customers, and compared to someone who is not as resilient, gives you the chance to win more. And that's why I think when we're talking about this, we're talking about how do you stay competitive, not just to scare anyone about the risks here, but to turn risk into opportunity. Michaela, can you change the slide? So I told you earlier that the DBO uses trusted public data sources. These are just a sampling. These are just a sampling of where we're getting information to help create the baselines that are in the tool, whether it's the Industrial Assessment Center or the EIA, the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the EPA, NREL, which is National Renewable Labs, FEMA, right? So we're using sources of data that you can trust because there's no bias built into it, certainly not by Siemens. Michaela? And so I think with that buildup, Erica, and again, Erica Gupta is my head of sustainability. She's also the global head of sustainability for Siemens Financial Services. So she has a global view to sustainability and what drives risk in it. And so she is the creator of the tool. And Erica, why don't we go ahead and hand it over to you?
Thank you, Anthony. And I just wanted to let everyone know also that you're welcome to put questions into the Q&A if you have a question or would like to learn something else. So I think Anthony set up really nicely why we developed the DBO, and it's dbo.siemens.com that you can go to find it. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And what I'm going to walk you through really is what this tool does and how you can use it. So hopefully you are now seeing my screen. Let me just move this out of the way there for myself. So I've preloaded a couple of examples here, but when you first sign up and log in, it'll be blank and you'll see this button to say, I want to create a new site analysis. I just click that. And this does only work for the United States right now because that's the only location where we have all these really rich data sets that we're able to leverage. So I can put in any address I would like. It can be a city, a town. It doesn't have to be very specific. So I can go ahead and say, let's just try, I'll do just a fun one. Florida. There we go. Well, there's Miami, Ohio. But you'll see it'll just pull it up and you can select a location. The next thing you want to do is say what type of building you want to analyze it. So is it an industrial building like a manufacturer, chemical manufacturing? There's several different options below this if it's food or beverage. And I can also choose, from several of the commercial building types. We've got warehouses, offices, schools. These are all coming from that NREL Comstock database. So it's a very, very large data set that we're leveraging. We also recently added residential as well, including multifamily and single family too, if you wanted to look at your own home and see what it looks like for yourself. Once you select the location, you'll do a quick measurement of the building that you want to analyze unless you know it. You can also just put the rooftop area in, but let's say I don't know it, then I click this little tool because we wanted to make this really easy. And I can measure the outline of the building in order to quickly get the square footage. And I can add the number of stories there to get the total building square footage. There's also some optional fields. So let's pretend this wasn't a downtown city area and I had land area for renewables. I could add, say, a parking lot or a field, and that would give me additional space where I could place a renewable. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go to some of the scenarios that I've already created. But just to show you how quick this can be, you would just click Create Site Analysis, and it'll very quickly give you examples. So I preloaded one for an Ohio office building. So once I clicked Analysis, here is where it brings up the annual energy consumption. And what it's doing is just taking what's typical or average for a building of that type in that location of that size. But you can always update this with any real information you have in terms of how much energy the building uses. And that'll give you a more accurate reflection of your carbon footprint, as well as your optimization in the next step. The carbon footprint is, again, using data from the EPA on the combustion of the fuel and how much CO2 is produced from that. And for the electricity, it's using the average carbon intensity of the electric grid in your specific region from the EPA eGrid database. As for the annual energy cost, it's using the state average cost for your electricity and then the regional cost for your fuels. You can also update that electricity cost here, either with a custom tariff, or you can choose a utility rate from the utility rate database, and it'll pull up, the utility rates that are available in your location for the type of building you're looking at. So there's all ways to make this initial baseline more accurate. Once you've completed your baseline, the next step is really to move on to the optimization to look at achieving the goals you may want to reach. So in this case, we always preload 3 scenarios that you can run. One is a business as usual to give you a baseline for comparison. Another one is optimized for payback. So it looks at how much decarbonization maximizes your payback here. And then we always have 100% decarbonization scenario that you can run just for comparison. I preloaded a few samples here, including this one for backup power. So up top, you'll see you can choose different targets. So I could say, I want to achieve 20% decarbonization by a particular year, and it'll find the most cost optimal scenario that gives you at least 20%. And I stress the at least because if the more cost optimal scenario is 30% reduction, then that is what it'll return rather than the 20. For emergency power, this is backup power. So if your grid goes out and you want to size, say, batteries and PVs for your location to support your load, you can set that here. So for example, in this case, I said I wanted to be able to support 80% of my load. And in this case, I had done for 24 hours. So for one day, if the power was out, I'd want to be able to support 80% of my normal load. So there's usually some loads that are non-critical that you can turn off in an emergency power situation. And then finally, the investment scenario. So this is if you have, say, a maximum amount you are able to invest, you can constrain it to say, I have this amount of capital available. What's the maximum amount of decarbonization I can achieve with that amount? You can also do multiple of these at the same time. However, you are more likely to come into a situation where you get an infeasible as a result because you've over-constrained it. So I'd always recommend starting with just one, here's what I want to achieve for decarbonization, here's how much I have available for investment, and then look at how far apart those are and start iterating from there. The other thing you can do is look at custom assets. So if you just select this, it'll consider everything except, and note the except, the combined heat and power and wind turbines, because we assume that most locations cannot fit those. So you need to specifically go in and say, no, I do actually have the space to put a wind turbine on my site. But otherwise, the rest of these are considered. We have these 2 are grayed out, they're coming soon. And you can create a very specific scenario. So here I said just solar and battery and energy efficiency, for example. And if I look at, say, one of these, business as usual, I can then compare scenarios to optimize for payback. So here you can see the optimize for payback did take a long time to pay back. This is in Ohio. We don't have a lot of solar generation, but you can see the total life cycle cost over that time frame is lower. I can also look at my backup power scenario to say, what would be the cost for a day's worth of backup power? So in that case, I can see I actually also achieved a 66% reduction in CO2 in addition to getting that 24 hours of resilience. So this is a nice kind of co-benefit where I'm supporting resilience at my site. We also recently added this site resilience module, which specifically looks at what are the hazards in your location and what is most likely. So right now, you're going to have lightning and winter weather every year. That makes sense. So what are the things that you can do that have the most mitigation for those two? And then you can also look at, instead of probability of occurrence, you can look at loss rate. So what are the hazards in your area that create the greatest loss? And in this case, it's tornado. So I can look at what are the things, or strong winds should be the same, basically. What are the things I can do that have the most effective mitigation against those two things? And I can also say, okay, what are the things that are just low cost? And you'll see simple things like ensuring you don't have outdoor furniture that can be blown around and into the building, right? So some very simple things in addition to more complex. If I don't go for cost effort, I just go for implementation effort, or I can do both together to take a look at what's most effective. Or if I select none, now I have all of them, and you can see it's sorted by effectiveness score. So the higher the effectiveness score, it means the more hazards that mitigation measure is effective against. So this was just a way for us to say, okay, what are the hazards that are most likely in my location, and what can I do to mitigate them or at least reduce them? If we look at another example, for say, in this one happens to be in California. Here, if I go to my optimization, you can see there's a big difference in the payback where you have a lot more solar power. So here we have a 5-year payback for this, and we can compare that to the business as usual, and you can see quite a large delta in the cost. This was just a sample of a hospital, and here I also gave an example of what it looks like if you over constrain. So if I go back to the optimizer, so in this case, I over constrained it. In addition to maximize CO2, I added some additional constraints on like what technologies I wanted to use. So it returned infeasible if you do these custom assets. So I just wanted you to see what that looks like. And then if you want any help with this, one thing to know is, one, we have this guided tour right here that'll walk you through any page that you're on, explain what it is and how to navigate it. You can also here contact us. Obviously, we're happy to help you, but you can also just get technical support on the tool or report an issue. And if you go to this FAQ page here, you'll see our user manual, which will explain in detail how we're doing the calculations, what they're based on, because we did not want this to be a black box. We wanted to be really transparent and make sure you know where the data is coming from and how we're doing it. And then these here are the links to all the data sets, and you can go in and you can explore them directly. So with that, I'd ask if there are any questions on the line or other things that I should demonstrate.
All right, Erica. I do have some questions that were thrown at us. Erica, I think you addressed this one, but just to be clear, does the tool address scope 3 emissions?
It does not. It is completely focused on scope 1 and 2.
Okay.
So, someone else's scope 1 and 2 is their customer's scope 3, right? So our supply chain is our scope 3 emissions. It's their scope 1 and 2.
Excellent. That makes sense. And then are there particular industries that are currently using the tool more than others, and why?
That is a good question. It is honestly quite varied in who's using it. We've seen a good uptake from some of the SME community, including our own Siemens supply chain, because we've rolled this out to our suppliers as a way for them to report to us, for starters, what their carbon footprint is. If they don't have the data, it's a way for them to get an estimate. For our own, quite a few consultants actually pick this up and start using it, in addition to the businesses that have been using it, a lot of manufacturers. And honestly, there's a good number of Siemens users as well, I've noticed, that are working with their customers to help them kind of walk through what are the scenarios, what are the different things we could do. And it's a good place to, have a sandbox where you can start that discussion.
That's great. And I mean, the tool is still pretty new, right?
Yes, it is quite new still.
Hopefully we can get more companies using it in the near future here. And then I have two more that were thrown at me here. How can someone use the data from the tool to most effectively bring about change in the organization?
So I think there's two things that are really helpful. One is really in the optimization. If you can show clearly that there's a positive ROI and that you can reduce your operating costs through taking action, I think that's one thing that really helps drive action. And then I think also being able to really show, here are the hazards where we are, and the ones that are most likely and the ones that cause the most loss. These are the things that we should really be thinking about protecting against in order to minimize our losses.
Got it. Another question just came in. Could you speak to the updated tariff section?
Okay. So in the baseline, if you want to update the tariff, there is this one for utility rates. And this actually goes to the utility rate database. So if I go back to my FAQ here, here's the utility rate database, and hopefully that's still showing. So this is created by the US Department of Energy. And what it does is it collects utility rates from all across the country and includes the time of use rates as well. So when you pull that in, it doesn't just give you a flat price, it actually does the time of use price. So the optimization is taking into account when electricity is the most expensive, and it's sizing your battery or your PV system to minimize your peak loads during the maximum cost periods, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answered the question or not, but.
I think it did, but again, that came from the Q&A, so I don't know who answered it right away. So, and then just a couple other questions that have been sent to me. Why was making the tool free important to you all?
Anthony might wish to answer that one, but I could.
Sure, I'll give it a go, and maybe you can supplement. Again, I think as I said earlier, this all started with customers. This all started with customers that came to us that said, I'm getting an RFP. It's asking me for my baseline carbon footprint, because that would then be one of the deciding factors. And it came from a major tech company, but we saw it with other manufacturers, and including Siemens, which has something similar for its supply chain. And so they came to us and they asked us for help in translating it. How do I answer that question that's not familiar to me, or can you guide me to the best way to approach it, et cetera? So it started there, and then we said, well, how can we do this in a way that takes bias out? That's the third party data. And then the fourth part is, we don't want to be a consultant to you. We don't want to charge for this. We want to be a trusted partner. We want to provide financing. We would love for you to use Siemens technology, but we don't want to be sitting there and looking to charge you to give you some basic information and be competitive. So, again, we want this to be ubiquitous. We want everyone to have the same chance. we saw consultants, we saw some of our customers have proposals from consultants that were to the tune of millions of dollars in consulting work to get to an approach to, carbon footprint or resiliency or whatnot. Most of 80% of what needs to be done can be found sort of inside here with basic block and tackling, basic needs. That last 20%, you may need that consultant and pay a lot of money for, but the core of what you need to do, I think is built inside this tool. So we wanted it to be available for others. Erica, did you have a thought?
No, I love that answer. And that really is where it developed. When Anthony first approached me about developing this tool and working together on it, he really stated, we're successful when our customers are successful, and I want to help them be successful. And that's what the goal was here. And if we put a paywall between our customers and the data that they need to take action, we're limiting that success, right? Or that access to success. And it really developed into a tool that now the Siemens supply chain in the US has also really promoted and helped to provide to our suppliers, because we have our own scope 3 reduction targets. We're not going to be able to achieve them on our own. We need our supply chain to work with us. So this tool, giving them access to this and supporting them through this free platform, really helps us achieve our own targets too. So it's not just our success, it's also our own carbon footprint reduction and our own supply chain resilience when you start thinking about ensuring that they're up and running.
And by the way, as a footnote, we know that some of our competitors or some of Siemens' competitors use the tool, and that's okay. I mean, Siemens' name is across it, but, not to be Pollyanna, but it's a great or good thing. I think, we'll get our share of the overall market wallet. The big opportunity is to get as many participating in change. Eric, I did want, and I know, Ryan, you have other questions. Do you want to touch on, I know we don't have a demo or anything, do you want to touch on what we're looking to build with the cyber tool?
Absolutely. So it's not yet available, but we're working on a prototype that we will start testing with trusted partners and customers to give us feedback on later this year, in fact, that does a cybersecurity assessment. And it's based on the NIST frameworks, and we're going to do 3 initially. One is a general assessment for cybersecurity readiness. One is the NIST 2.0. And then the final one is a malware or ransomware readiness assessment. So you can go in and answer some questions, and it'll give you, okay, this is how complete your assessment is, how prepared you are, and give you specific action items that you can take in order to improve.
And so why are we doing that? These 3 components, decarbonization, resiliency, and cybersecurity, are the core of what makes a sustainable company in our minds, right? Then there's other things like the factory of the future, automation, other things. But if you want to understand your company's ability to be sustainable in the future, to compete, decarb, resiliency, cyber, this is a good starting. We hope this is a good starting place to get there.
That's great. Love that you're rolling all these tools out. I've always said that, I love seeing when larger corporations are able to offer up some of the blueprint around how they've made decisions or tools themselves that they develop to their customers and other small to medium-sized enterprise, because a lot of small to medium-sized enterprises just don't have the resources and or talent and or money to actually produce their own. And so it's really helpful when a company like Siemens does this. So thank you. 2 other quick questions. I think actually just one really, but earlier, Erica, you mentioned some potential long payback, exceeding some of the cost thresholds for renewables. Can you tell us again will the tool actually go in and give you different potential ways to finance a renewable energy investment, for example? So whether it's a PPA or a lease or outright purchase.
So we don't have that built in today, but we do have a contact for financing. So if you want to speak with an expert, that's again doesn't cost anything. Go ahead, contact us, and we'll do what we can to help you out. I will say that one thing I should have mentioned is that the tool does take into account the current available federal tax incentives for the technologies. It does not take into account any state or local incentives. So if you have state or local incentives available in your region, your payback may look better than what is, first presented here. And that's, again, a point where you want to sit down with an expert and really look at your site specific analysis.
Sure, makes all sense. It's hard to keep all that going in every single district and every single community. So I totally.
We're trying to, use some AI to help us keep up to date on that, but still it's constant change, right? So.
Right, absolutely. And it will be constantly changing probably at the federal level as well, obviously. So good to know that you can at least adjust those when the time's right. Well, I don't have any other questions. So I just want to thank you, Erica, Anthony, Sean, for being a part of this webinar. Thank you for those that attended. Ask some questions. We really appreciate you listening in and learning more about the digital business tool optimizer. And really, again, appreciate Siemens for making this available, for sharing it with us and the Greater Cleveland Partnerships membership and other chambers of commerce throughout Ohio. So again, thank you all very much. Please feel free to send any questions to me directly, and I'll make sure the appropriate person gets it. My contact information is on the screen at the end there. And again, one more time, thank you everybody for being with us today, and thank you to all of our presenters. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ryan.